I went down the rabbit hole this month. Skills, plugins, project folder instructions, team accounts, all of it. The whole tangle of where do instructions actually live and who gets to see them. And I want to be honest with you about how it all started because it wasn't noble. I went in with a boring logistics question. The kind you expect a one sentence answer to, the kind you ask so that you can get back to work. Well, I couldn't get back into work. I mentioned a couple weeks ago or a couple episodes ago and through my newsletter that I've been transitioning my personal cloud account into a business like team account. And that's also part of the reason. I came out of that rabbit hole having found something wrong with the way my entire operation has been built to this point. It's not like a bug or it's a bad file or anything like that. It was more of a structural thing, like basically sitting underneath everything. And it's been there well, basically since I started doing any type of AI work, even beyond the whole aspect of creating project folder instructions that I've written about, SOPs and all that. And I just couldn't see that structure from where I was standing or from the process that I had already started. So we're going to talk about that. I'm Baldomero Garza. I lead growth marketing for companies in health and wellness. I help teams grow their impact peacefully. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I found in this process, because I don't think it's a me problem. I think a lot of you will find that you have this type of problem in your business and it's invisible and it's quietly capping how good your work can get. So let's get started. So here's the boring question. Again, I moved my setup over to a team account. And when you do that, you start running into a fork in the road that I've never had to think about before. On one side, you have project folder instructions, a folder for a specific type of job with documentation inside it, basically telling how we do this thing for, in my case, a client, but it could be, in your case, it could be for this department or for this instance. On the other side, there's something called a skill, right? Which is a reusable set of instructions that travels with the person or the project or the company or the department instead of living inside of one folder. And if you ever look at, when you ask a question, whenever you look at project folder instructions, if like Claude or ChatGPT is making them for you, you'll see that it writes in skills as well. And so you can carry that into whatever work you're working on. And my question was basically, okay, so what's the difference? Which one am I supposed to use? Do I move everything? Is this a naming thing? And part of the reason I came up to it is because as I was asking, like I was getting stuck in transferring some of the things over the team account and it kept saying, well, just transfer the skill. And I go through YouTube videos and I have friends that talk about it and it wasn't ever clear. And so I imagined if it wasn't, even though I'm in it and it wasn't always clear what a skill was or what the difference was, that's the reason I wanted to talk more about it. But the answer I landed on was one sentence, and it's because of it, it's reorganized how I see my entire business now. A project, right? A project folder is a place, and a skill is a procedure. Again, a project is a place, and a skill is a procedure. And just to give you like a forward look into where I'm going at. Personally, I had been using project folders as a skill in a sense, or writing skills within it in a very long text. So again, a place, right? A project folder is a place. It holds what's true about, in my case, the client, but it might hold true for like a certain type of process or for a certain department in your company. So it's that voice, it's that terminology, it's that pricing, those links, the words they should never use, the way they talk about their own work. That's a place. It doesn't move. A procedure is how a job gets done anywhere, right? You could turn a class recording into a newsletter, right? Turn a podcast into a newsletter, write a subject line, build out a sales sequence. Those aren't facts about a certain department or a certain client, in my case. Those are facts about the work, right? So those can travel, right? So like a subject line, different departments, different clients can be writing emails to different vendors or to different team members or different types of clients, different avatars for their customers, right? And so a business to business department, sales department is going to be writing to different clients, right? Than like a commercial, straight to commercial or e-commerce. But both of those departments can exist within the same company, or in my case, different clients, right? And so the standard that you hold for something like writing a subject line so that it's more likely to get opened should be equal across, right? Because like you're going to take the same type of process. So that's the skill versus the project folder would be like, but this is the differences that we're making to this client or to this type of avatar, which would be different than the instructions in the other department because they're writing to a different avatar or to a different department. So I sat with that for a minute before the floor moved, because I looked at my folders, which again, they were very organized. I wrote about this. I've talked about this, and I realized almost everything in my folders was already a procedure. So I had been writing those skills for months. I just been writing each one over and over and over again, because the difference is, I guess I'll get into what the difference is. So let me set the table so you can see how normal this looked to me, because I want to be clear that this wasn't a mess. This was the opposite of a mess. I run content and marketing operations for a handful of health brands and agency clients, practitioners mostly. And a rule I gave my team early was never work from a blank check. It's a rule that I follow myself. Never work from like a blank check. Never start from nothing. I always work inside a project folder that already has the context loaded. So you should see my project, my Claude, in my sense, there's like 50 different project folders, and every client has like 5 or 6 or more project folders, because there's a project folder for this type of work and another project folder for that type of work for that client. And same thing for other clients. They have 5 or 6 different project folders, just depending on the work that we're doing with them. So every client has folders, again, plural, because the client doesn't buy like one thing, right? Like they don't sign up for one type of work in most cases. They sign up for this type of service and that type of service and that type of procedure and multiple things, show notes, scripts, all that. And so within that, each folder has real documentation in it, like voice, templates, sourcing rules, quality checklists. Like it's what I want anytime I run a chat within that project folder, what I want them to do, what I want it to do every single time. And by any normal standard, that's pretty well run shop, right? That's more documentation than most businesses, especially my size, have. If you'd asked me a week before, I would have told you like that's how you do it. And it's not wrong. And here's where, for what the documentation feels like from like the inside, it feels like maturity. Every time I wrote another folder instructions, it felt like I was getting one step further from being the guy that holds the whole business in my head. I was right about the direction, but I was wrong about what I was building. I thought I was building a system, but I was building more of an archive, because once you have a like place versus a procedure, you can sort anything in about 4 seconds. Pick up any line in any of our documentation and ask just one question. Is this true about the client? Or is this true about the job? Or is this true about this department, this workflow? The way that this client refers to their program, client, their pricing, their links, their phrase they hate, client, how long a subject line should be, that's a job. How we source a claim, job. What makes a draft ready to send, job. And when I actually ran that sort across my folders, it wasn't close. Most of what I've written down was about the job, which means most of what I'd written down, I had written more than once. So let's make this concrete, because documentation is an abstract word, and I want you to see the actual like object, see like the real direction of this. So take the simplest rule in my entire operation, how we write a subject line. I could probably write a whole thing about this, and there's plenty of ways. And honestly, AI does its own work. But if you've ever worked with AI or for a long time, you've noticed that like you might say like, oh, it keeps getting better at doing this type of writing subject lines. But for us, there's always an aspect of testing it. Like there's tools to also test the subject line, and that's part of the process. But And so that's for me, that's part of how I know that it's gotten better at writing subject lines. AI has, because it used to be that like it would give me 5 or 6 options, which is also a process, give me 5 or 6 options. And there's a method that I like for it to use. And it used to be that it would give me like, let's say 5 or 6 options, and then I would go and test them. And the scores were not above 90, which is a standard that I like to hold. Give me a 90 in this one tool that I use. And they would be like 75s and 80s and 89s and 88s. And I'd be like, well, give me another 6. And I go and like test it again. And that's it. Like, not a strategy, not positioning a subject line. Every client I write an email for has a rule about it, because that rule matters. And it's the first thing anybody sees. It's the difference between the email getting open and the email being, just a wallpaper or just kind of deleted, especially as people have better AI or better Gmail tools or email tools, and they just kind of delete or have the AI delete them because they know it's not relevant or whatever. So each time I worked with a new client, or even within the same clients, we had a different, like now they added a different type of email, right? I've had clients that start where like we're doing one email for them. And then at some point it's like, well, we're doing like one email a week. And at one point we're doing 4 emails a week for different reasons, right? Like an educational one, a sales one, a testimonial one, like, whatever, right? So each time that I did that, I had to rewrite that whole rule of how we do that again and again and again. So that rule always lived in the project folder instructions, something like, and this is not the ones, I'm not going to give it all, but like, keep it under 50 characters. I like to use this curiosity gap approach where you want to use like a number or a concrete description within the subject line, personalize it to the person. And there's several, don't use the same one every single time. Like, don't use the same rule. There's like 4 or 5 different rules that can be used. And I'll make sure I'll do an episode on just subject lines, because right now the average that we get is between 55 and 70% open rates, including like not expert, like not including like not individual people or practitioners. Like, this is including brands, right? So no spam, no trigger words. So, but the thing about it is that if I ever wanted to update that rule, right? Or if I wanted to make it better myself, or let's say like, hey, one of the rules is like, give me 5 options. Like, what if I decided like, well, I want you to give me 10 options now, and I want that to be the new standard or whatever that might be. Or like, make sure you do use a number every single time. If I wanted to do that from now on, because I found that works better. And I said like, the standards for subject line writing has changed every time. But anytime there was a change being made, I would have to go find or that part of the section in the project folder instructions of every project folder instructions where I put that in, right? So if I had 7 clients and each of those 7 clients had at least 2 different places where there's subject line rules in their project folder instructions, then that's 14 different places that I have to go in there, go find the subject line rules and change it to whatever the new rule is that I wanted to use. Well, from that, if you were to update the skill, right, like the subject line skill, then you don't have to go update it in 14 different places. And anytime I write if I got a new client, or there's a new or one of the clients wants to add another email, then I just say, use this skill for writing a subject line. So you could imagine like how much fidelity isn't lost from keeping that type of structure versus having to go and find it everywhere. And there's been plenty of times where like I update a rule in the project folder and then I know like I need to go update it everywhere, and I'll start doing that. And then I'll, either get tired or something else comes in, and there's like, oh, I'll just finish updating it on the project folders and like tomorrow or later. And then later never happens. And then I get stuck with, damn, like this one is not producing the same type of quality that these other ones are. And I know it's because I guess this is one of the ones I hadn't updated. So again, that wasn't a mistake. It was just the way that I was seeing it. And honestly, that method was still better than like not having that, right? Now, think about what a subject line is, right? Like just because of the sake of of using this example. If one of the simplest rules that I own had quietly split into two versions, which I kind of gave that example. What do you think would happen to more complicated rules? Then definitely 100% they would break it. And look, I found this through like skills and plugins and team accounts. That's the doorway. But I want to be clear that this problem has nothing to do with software. This exact thing happens in Notion. It happens in Google Docs. It happens in 3-ring binders in a filing cabinet. The tools just made get visible quicker. And then as far as plugins go, well, plugins are just a set of skills, right? So it's like a plugin automatically applies 3 or 4 skills, right? Like a plugin could be a subject line skill and a brand voice skill for a client, and then a character voice skill wrapped up in one. When applied to a different department, it'll still ask you like, what is the new skill or what is the plugin that you want to use adapted to this department? And you might answer those questions a different way than the previous, but it automatically gets applied across all 3 skills for that project forever, or at least until each of those skills or plugins are updated for you. So let's talk about the fix, right? The fix has a real name in the database world, and I'm not going to use it because the jargon makes it sound harder than it really is. It's 3 moves. 1, the job gets written once. 1 copy of here's how we turn a recording into a newsletter. 1 copy of subject line rule. Every client who buys that service points at the same one. 2, the client gets written once. Voice, terminology, pricing, links, the things that stay true no matter which job you're doing. And 3, the folder becomes a pointer. Use this job for this client, and here's the one thing that's different about this particular case. That's the whole redesign. Just 3 moves, right? And so much easier to build from that point. Let's say if you have a new department or like you have a new type of client, and then you say, hey, let's do the same type of job, but apply it in this case. So here's what the differences are between that and this. But then you have like a working source and you don't have to rethink the wheel. One of my folders went from like 9 pages of instructions to 12 lines. And from the point of like tokens and like usage of all that, it's very helpful because it's reading 12 lines versus 9 pages. But I want to be really clear about what happened there because it sounds like I deleted something, like nothing was lost. Every single thing in those 9 pages still applies to the job for that client. It just lives in one place instead of like 6 different places. What's left in 12 lines is basically do this job for this client. Here's the one weird thing about them. Basically, the job is like somewhere else. The client is somewhere else. The folder's entire remaining purpose is to connect the 2 and note the one exception. And the subject line, there's one of it now, which means when I get better at subject lines, I get better at subject lines across the board. Same afternoon, every client without remembering anything. And that's the actual win, not like a tidier folder, an improvement that only happens once. And I'm sure I could have used a better example than subject lines, but that's just such an easy win. And hopefully you kind of understand that. It's like, well, I write subject lines all the time and I just use it. And for me, like even from there being a standard that you can rely on, that's not going to change because, the AI is working on they're trying out a different code or whatever, then you can rely on that. And if whatever they're trying a new code writes a better subject line, then I would want to figure out like, well, what is it that now works better? And let's bake that into the rule because we want the same standard. Now, this is the most important part of the episode. And it's the part I'd cut if I were like running long. So I'm telling you up front, I'm not cutting it because if you take what I just said and run straight at it, you'll go consolidate your whole business into one beautiful, like non-repeating set of instructions and you will break something. So here's how I know. There's one rule in my operation that I deliberately wrote in 3 places on purpose, knowing exactly what I was doing. It's a rule about how a specific person gets described in copy, right? So how a specific person gets described in a copy. And getting it wrong has burned us before more than once. So when I was consolidating, I looked at that one and thought, if I move this into a single shared location, I've just invented a brand new way to miss it. Somebody's working in a folder, the folder points somewhere else, they don't follow the pointer, and the rule quietly doesn't get applied. For most rules, that's an inconvenience. For that one, that's a phone call I don't want to have to make. So it stays in 3 places, and when it changes, I'll change it in 3 places on purpose, and that's a cost I've decided to pay. So how do you tell which one's which? I ended up with 2 questions, and I want to duplicate when both answers are a yes. 1, if somebody misses this, does anyone outside my business find out? Not, is it annoying? Does it reach the client or the client's audience? Most rules don't. A clunky subject line is a clunky subject line. Nobody calls. Like, it just hurts your numbers, right? Like, hurts your open rates. And obviously, if it continues to hurt your open rate, well, there's 2 mistakes. One of them is that you continued using that same method. And the second one is that, well, you are doing whatever you're doing to not improve. But it's really just the same rule. But 2, it's the kind of thing that gets skipped because it's a pointer. Some rules you'd follow anyways because the work doesn't make sense without them. Others are easy to blow past them when you're moving fast. Like, those need to be in your face, right? 2 yeses, it gets duplicated. Anything less, 1 place, and let the pointer do its job. Normalize by default, duplicate on purpose where the cost of failure is high. Both of those halves matter. If everything's an exception, then you've built the mess with extra steps. If nothing is, then you're being tidy at the expense of being right. So just one more practical thing, and this one cost me a wrong turn. My first instinct was to fix it the way you'd fix anything, one at a time, most important client first. Knock out folder 1, feel good, move to folder 2, more, so on and so on. And that's wrong. And the reason it's kind of counterintuitive, because you cannot see duplication 1 folder at a time. The entire point is spotting the same thing written 6 or 14 different ways. And you can't spot that if you're only ever looking at one of the 6. Migrate folder by folder, and here's what happens. You name something on a folder 3, you get to folder 13 and realize it should have been 2 different things. And now 5 folders point at the wrong name. You're not migrating anymore. You're doing like rework and over again. And I tend to get caught in stuff like that. It's like, well, if I fix it here, then I'm going to go fix it today, not tomorrow. So lay all of them out first, all of them, before you build anything. And laying them out is less sophisticated than it sounds. Mine was a table. Every rule got a row, every folder got a column. Mark which folders have something to say about that rule. That's the whole tool. And the second it was on one screen, the duplication was just visible. But the opposite mistake is just as real. Like, don't map everything, design the perfect system on paper, and then go build all of it. But then that's how you spend a whole month on something you've never tested. Map the whole thing, then build exactly one, then run real work through it. If the map is wrong, and part of it will be, you lost an afternoon instead of like a whole month. So here's why I'm telling you this in the middle of it instead of after, because I am in the middle of it. This migration isn't done. Actually, it might be done now, but there's no like tidy after picture. And I'd rather tell you that than sell you one. But I know what it costs to wait, because like this tax compounds per client. And the other part that it compounds is that you then find like, oh, here's another thing I need to change, and another thing I need to change. And now all of a sudden you have 3 different big things that you need to change because you keep saying that you'll do the other part later when it's no longer in the middle of. At like 2 or 3 departments or clients, it's annoying, right? At 10, it's a reason nothing improves. Every improvement costs like 10 edits, so improvements stop like happening, and the business like quietly freezes at whatever quality it hit back when it was like small. You don't get worse, you just stop getting better, and nobody notices because nothing broke. Do this while the task itself is small, and it's the cheapest that it'll ever be. And that's the whole episode in one question. Forget everything else and like just keep this. When you improve how you do something, how many places do you have to go and change it? If the answer is more than 1, well, that's the episode. That's you. Here's what I want you to do about 15 minutes. Open 2 places where you've documented the same process, like 2 clients or 2 departments, 2 folders, 2 docs, 2 notebooks, whatever your version is, like just 2. put them side to side and read them against each other, most people will find a disagreement within both of those within the first like 5 sentences. And when you do, I want to hear it. Reply to the newsletter or in the show notes, like tell me like what you found. And if you look at your own setup and you think, well, this is way bigger than 15 minutes, well, that's usually a good conversation to have with us. Book a call with me. It's in the show notes. But that's what the episode is. You probably don't have a documentation problem. You probably have a copies problem. And that's also my job now, which is what I'm going to take. That's the next small or to medium-sized project that I'm taking on now, which is I'm going to go look at all my project folders and extract where we can create skills, because it also helped me grow quicker. The next time someone wants to take on a project, it's not, hey, it might take me a week because I have to do all these things. And it's like, hey, it's going to take me a couple of days because I already have all the skills set up, plugins, which are a set of skills set up, and I just need to update them with your brand. And that's it. See you next time. Comment on your show notes, please subscribe. It helps the account so much. It helps the channel grow, helps us reach more people and help more people with AI and with their business. And for me, it's always the most important thing to help practitioners continue to educate their audiences about health, because health is changing all the time. Love you guys.